So far in this course, we've talked about a lot of different types of messages and communications as we work on becoming better writers and communicators. Because no matter how much experience we have, we can always improve. But we've never talked about communicating with the beyond. Now, I've said before that if there's one thing I know, it's that you never mess with Ouija boards. So we won't be going that route. But we can talk about mediums, whose role is to be the in-between or the person through which messages are passed back and forth from our physical realm to the spiritual, otherworldly realm. From the dramatic seances of the 19th century to the psychic hotlines we can call today for a few dollars a minute, mediums share and even interpret information. And the same is true for any medium or form we use in our writing. I know, I was excited to see how rhetoric and composition helps us talk to spirits. But there will be no ghosts in this episode, at least that we've scripted. Regardless, whether you're all about spiritual connections or don't really put much stock in them, the medium of a message influences and even changes the information that gets passed. Today, we're going to talk about the kinds of context created by the media we use to share our writing and receive messages from others. We can write better when we see how these in-betweens change how we both write and receive messages. I'm Dr. Emily Zarka, and this is Study Hall Rhetoric and Composition. Every piece of writing has some sort of context, which includes all the factors that influence how our writing is formed, shared, and received. And to become more effective writers, we can learn about those factors, from the timeliness of a given message to the places and spaces where we communicate. But the form of our message is also part of the context. So today, we're going to talk about the medium of a message, or media if we're talking about more than one medium. Either way, a medium is any material or form our writing or composition takes. All our messages pass through some kind of medium, just not usually a psychic one. Like your medium for sharing your essay draft with your professor might be a Google Doc or other word processor. But important updates are passed to us through major television news networks. And the videos and posts we create or send to each other make things like Twitter and TikTok media too. There are lots of different kinds of media for all our different types of communication. And a message can definitely pass through multiple media. Basically, we can think about our writing medium as whatever form or material or platform our message has to pass through to reach our audience. But just like we've talked about how we can't magically transmit our exact message into the minds of our audience, whatever medium we're working with isn't passing the message along unchanged. Instead, the medium impacts the message. Whatever you intended to say, it shows up differently if you write it in a word processor versus if you convey it through an online photo slideshow versus if you make a long video documentary about it. We can think of whatever medium we're working in as an interface, which is a term that the Oxford English Dictionary defines as a point where two systems, subjects, or organizations meet and interact. And that interaction changes the message. One way to recognize how interfaces change messages is to see how the actual interfaces we use have changed over time. Like before phones and radio became widespread, the main interface we had to communicate with other people was in-person meetings or written letters and newspapers. And now in the early 2020s, we can use multiple layered interfaces when we write. In fact, there have been people studying the complexities of written and spoken communication for millennia. But the study of how media shape our experiences of messages has become more and more relevant with the rise of all kinds of new technology, like whether you use voice to text or a keyboard impacts your writing, since the way we speak often has a different grammatical flow than the way we write by hand or with a keyboard. For some of us, how quickly we input our ideas can also impact whether we really mull them over first or write very quickly, which means that we might end up with more or less thoughtful writing. Different features within interfaces can also change everything from our word choice to our layout choices. Like if we use Google Docs a lot and Google adds a button that organizes our ideas into bullet points, or makes the bullet point button really obvious and easy to use, we may use more bullet points in our writing just because that button is visible and available. Or when there's a spell checker and it flags a word as incorrect, Even if the word is a real one that's just unusual and unfamiliar to the program, we might change our word choice just to be safe, since it's easy to overly trust a spell checker. These are subtle changes to how we write, but they wouldn't exist without the medium being an interface in between the writer and the audience. Communication scholars have also noticed and documented all kinds of trends in how media impact what information we choose to share. To dive into this further, we're going to focus on two specific categories of media that are super relevant to pretty much everyone's daily life: mass media and social media. For our purposes, we'll distinguish mass media as platforms where publications or companies share messages with extremely large audiences of at least thousands and more often millions of viewers and readers. Media thinker Neil Postman noticed and created an argument in his book Amusing Ourselves to Death in 1985 that the kinds of news that end up reaching a wide viewership on television were more trivial or sensational than those in the newspaper, partially because there was more potential for entertainment from television news and profit from that entertainment. Sure, there was serious television and sensational writing in newspapers, but he observed an overall trend in how people use the printed word versus the television news. A more recent version showcasing how the medium shapes the way we communicate is the concept of clickbait. These are headlines that are specifically trying to get more people to click on them by making the story seem really sensational in order to generate the click-based ad revenue that online publications need to survive. So there's incentive for publications to change what they put in the headline in order to attract more readers. It can also make them greenlight more sensational stories overall, letting important but less grabby topics get less coverage. Clickbait is an example of how there can be a money motive that drives how a site works baked right into the way people write for mass media. In our own writing, we may not have money motives behind our individual interactions, but the companies that run our social interfaces still do. Social media shares some blurry lines with mass media, since it's possible to develop a following of millions of people, whether you're an individual or a company. But in general, we're going to think about social media as platforms where we share messages with a combination of close friends and family, wider acquaintance networks, and maybe also those thousands or millions of people, if we gain that kind of influence. Just like mass media or media in general, social media interfaces also exert subtle pressure and influence what we choose to share. For instance, if you're on both Twitter and Instagram, you might have noticed your Twitter feed is filled with a lot more people posting their hot takes as just words than on Instagram, where the focus is on the photo and video. At this point, people probably don't even think about it. But when Instagram was designed as a photo-focused site, the design of the medium became part of the context of all the messages people were sending. While you could technically send a no-photo message on Instagram, the interface itself discouraged that move. Or we could look at reactions features. Different social platforms allow one-click responses from a like to more specific clicks like haha or wow on Facebook. Some platforms allow you to dislike or downvote a message. And in some forums, like Reddit, that downvote literally impacts whether you're likely to be read, pushing the most downvoted comments farther and farther down and displaying more popular comments more prominently. Ultimately, when the software engineers who work for a social media platform make a change to how your interface looks or give you different options for how and what to post, they aren't neutral. The medium is changing the messages that come across. In fact, many of these choices determine the success of the platform. You'd think that people would be disappointed if they have constraints on their ability to message friends and family, but those constraints are often the exact reason why the platforms gain popularity. Think back with me to a simpler time, 2013. Cell phone cameras were getting better and better, data processing speeds were going up, but weren't so high that the average person could easily load large, clunky video files, and people loved video and the idea that they could see video on a phone app, not just on a computer. And the social media platform Vine was reaching peak popularity. Vine began with a nearly impossible seeming constraint. you could only record video for 6 seconds. But somehow, creating 6-second videos that still told a story, shared a message, or just made someone laugh was a creative challenge that became very popular very fast. From videos that showed crazy backflip stunts to cute moments of a kid calling a flock of ducks a bunch of chickens, Vine's short format shaped what could be done with the app. But one of the reasons Vine was superseded by other video-based social media was that 6 seconds was just too short for people to tell their stories. Now, almost a decade later, if you want to create a video of a little kid calling ducks chickens, you have a host of other feature options, from a longer form, to adding in music, to creating a surprising jump cut and replacing the ducks with actual chickens. You know, if you wanted. In mid-2013, Vine was a powerful medium and social media novelty, but eventually, new features on other platforms drew the audience away. When we assume that all the communication power is with the writer or with the interpretation from the audience, we miss key context factors. Many media, from social media to mass media, to interfaces like Zoom and word processors, want to be erased, to be invisible, so that you think they don't have an impact. But they do. Every new feature update, every resized or reconfigured menu, and every choice of ad location impacts what kinds of messages pass through that medium. So every time you start a writing task, it's worth a few minutes of reflection to consider what the medium you're using is doing to your message. Sometimes you've picked a medium that helps you accomplish your goals, but sometimes you'll feel a bit against the grain. Like if you try to teach people a silly dance using a word processor, or try to compose your historical analysis paper using TikTok. Maybe you'll create something truly unique by picking an out-of-the-box medium. But some other medium might give you more of what you need to accomplish your goals. The key when becoming a better writer is to be intentional, whether you're choosing your medium to get through to a wide audience or to reach out to a friendly ghost. Thanks for watching Study Hall Rhetoric and Composition, which is part of the Study Hall Project, a partnership between ASU and Crash Course. If you liked this video and want to keep learning with us, be sure to subscribe. You can learn more about Study Hall and the videos produced by Crash Course and ASU in the links in the description. See you next time.